All right, Tony, how's it going?
What up, man? Long time. Well, it's been a few weeks, so
Yeah.
happy to get some content back out.
We're here live. Me and Tony. Dusty is doing his duty, serving our country. Something that is in
hmm
long in me and Tony's past. Uh, he's holding the bar for all of us now at this point. But yeah, it's like you said, it's been a few weeks. Time to get back on here, talk some Bengals football. Training camp is going on. I mean, just a few weeks away from the preseason.
Yeah,
Everything feels like it happened so fast since the draft, and I mean, I for one am very excited.
yeah, man. Yeah, and as a reminder there we go. We've been sporadic with our communications and our episodes. We're gonna get more consistent over the next few weeks, obviously moving into the season. So look out for that. But yeah, to your point, like training camp going on now, day two. Some really cool things coming out of that. Now, obviously, they got to put the pieces together, but it seems like the draft was just the other day, and now we're moving into the preseason. And every single year, it seems like that. We get to the end of July, and then August is like gone, and now we're at football season. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fantasy football season as well. What do you got on the agenda this year? Any big leagues? Anything you want to avoid humiliation, last place punishment, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm happy you mentioned that. So a year ago, I won, and then last season, I got second to last place. I don't know what happened. It was the injury trains came, and it just hit me like a freight train, man. So this year, we're going to take a different approach to drafting. I've done a lot of research. I know none of that matters. It's all waiver wire and injuries, but the only positive coming out of it. So I'm in a keeper league. I've done it for about 10 years with some guys from high school, and the buy-ins a decent amount, the payouts a decent amount. We do a little draft every year, but the positive is it's a keeper league. So I don't know if you've done a keeper league before, but we get to keep one player every year from the league, and wherever you drafted that person at, it's one draft slot above that, unless it was a waiver wire. So, for example, I kept T. Higgins last year. He was a fourth round pick or something like that. So it bumped me up to a third round pick. I got CJ Stroud in the waiver wire last year. He's my keeper, so he automatically goes to my last pick in the draft. So now I don't really need to worry about a quarterback, and I'll just draft, really cool skill players. Are you in a league at all?
Yeah, I've also been in my main league is I've been for about 10, 11 years. A couple guys that like Gaspera and Keo,
Yeah.
a few other guys are in the league. So it's very fun. This year we're taking a vote here probably in a week or two before the draft whether the guys that have stayed want to make it a keeper league or not. I am
Mhm.
100% in favor of the keeper league. I think it's great. It makes it for like more fun, and it gives people an incentive to like care throughout the year, that kind of stuff. So we're kicking around some extra ideas for maybe like bonuses for highest points scored, maybe weekly, maybe at the end of the season, that kind of stuff. Um, so we're getting ready to dive deep into all that stuff. I think you know I always try to avoid being Bengals every year, but
Yeah.
this year, I'm excited for it, man. I mean, you mentioned Chase Brown before we started this. I think that he's going to be an absolute stud, fantasy wise. Zach Moss is going to have his role, and maybe Travion has a little bit of a third down, pass protector kind of deal. But for the most part, we have one explosive guy, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's dive in, man. So you talked about Chase Brown a little bit. It's interesting to see how they're going to break down the carries. I think Chase Brown. If I were to look into my crystal ball here, I think Chase Brown is going to be at least a first down back or a second down back, and then they're going to lean on Zach Moss for that third down pass protection. My hope is they don't become predictable in their sets, kind of like Mixon and Pirine were, where you kind of knew if Mixon was on the field, there's a high chance they're going to run it. If Pirine's on the field, the worst you're going to see is a screen pass, but ultimately it's going to be a lot of that heavy third down blocking. I hope that to see a little bit more of a mixture there because both guys bring a unique skill set. And what I saw, at least from Chase Brown last year, he had the second fastest speed in the NFL. So we know that they can use him as a weapon. They just don't want to get into a situation where Dan's offense is becoming a lot more predictable with their personnel sets. What do you think? Uh-oh, we lost Chris. Hold on one second, fellas. You back?
All right, I'm back. Sorry,
You back?
I was telling Tony before we started, I got to do this from my phone because my laptop died and I cannot locate the charger. It may be somebody else's fault, but that person will remain nameless. So, um,
That's fine.
yeah,
Still goes on.
I'm really excited for the offense, for the backfield specifically. Like you said, I think Chase Brown probably handles the first and second down, most of that kind of role. I do think that there will be specific situations, probably 2-minute situations, stuff like that, where Zach Moss probably gets the nod in specific sets like that and whatever. But you hit the nail on the head. Exactly my thoughts with the don't be predictable. Like if you're predictable in the NFL, if teams only have to scheme against the run or against the pass, then they're going to be way better. And instead, like part of the what this team has been like built on, one of the buzzwords that we've heard a lot is versatility. And okay, so now you have like Jamar Chase can play inside, outside. T. Higgins mostly outside, but he's played some inside and provided valuable snaps from the slot before. You got Jermaine Burton, Andre Yosevich, Charlie Jones. All of these guys have a little bit of versatility, and that's not even to mention Gesicki bumping out to the slot, a couple of different tight ends that we can use in different ways. So I think the way that you make this backfield successful is to fully utilize the versatility of what you have in the rest of the offense. Because we've seen Chase Brown be explosive already last year. He had a couple of huge plays coming down the stretch towards the end of the year. And we've known by, the analytics and all the stuff that they say whenever we got Zach Moss that he's going to be like a steady force back there. But he can do a lot of different things, especially out of the shotgun. He can run from the shotgun. He can run the zone offense. So the key is going to be making sure you're utilizing that, making sure you're mixing that up. And the thing about Chase Brown, I think, is that he was a bell cow back at Illinois, and he was on the field for like 80%, 85% of the snaps every season or whatever. That is like a made up number from my head, but he spent most of his time at Illinois on the field. Like it's, a lot of teams, they shy away from these guys with a lot of tread on their tires in college and whatever. But Chase Brown is the opposite of that. He does have a lot of tread on the tires, and the Bengals were like, all right, let's take a shot at this guy because he does have that explosion. Like you said, second fastest, speed record in the NFL last year. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal for a team that struggled so much last year with their explosive plays. I think we got to make sure that we're utilizing that, and in order to fully utilize that, we got to use that versatility and got to make sure we're not predictable.
Yeah, correct. And my thought is, and I've thought this for a long time, is we can't put the onus all on the offensive line. I'm kind of switching gears a little bit here, but think about it for a minute. We have a ton of guys here with a very unique skill set, all really good players within their own right. We're going to see a lot of steps forward out of guys like Yosevich and Charlie Jones this year. We've got 2 running backs and obviously a healthy Burrow. I don't think the onus is always on the offensive line because when we have an efficient running game or we have an efficiency in the offense to be able to move the ball, you see everything else kind of correlate alongside with that, right? I.e., example, the 49ers in San Fran last year. Everything seemed to be clicking. We were super efficient, and we won the game by leading the entire every single quarter. We had a lead, right? I think if they're able to produce a more efficient offense everything else is going to fall in place. They have a lot of talent on that offensive line. I think they give up a lot of sacks because their play calling was predictable in the past. I think Callahan was still a really good offensive coordinator, but at times he got really predictable and put Burrow out there to be high and dry and didn't really put them into situations where they could be most efficient and utilize those skill sets that they have in that offense, right? Now we've got more talent, now we've got more depth. I think they've patched the holes where they need to be patched. Now you just need to go put it together and be efficient. And I think priority number one, of course, is to keep Joe Burrow upright. I think one more injury, we're in a really, really bad situation. But otherwise, just speaking from a positive note, everything else clicks if you're an unpredictable yet efficient offense and you put players in the correct positions to utilize their strengths.
Yep, and I mean this is something that goes right along with kind of what we were talking about being unpredictable with the offensive line. It's like, okay, if you're predictable, if a team knows that it's, they only have to prepare against the run. Okay, now the defensive line and the linebackers on the other team are playing the run, so they don't have to worry about dropping deep into coverage and covering the middle of the field so a guy doesn't get past them. They don't, if it's like known that the Bengals are going to throw the ball, okay, now you got guys, especially guys in the division like Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, that are just pinning their ears back and running after the quarterback. Any offensive line in the
Steelers
league,
and the Browns did that. Like if you saw, not to cut you off, but the Browns and the Steelers, they key in on that. You watched those games last year, they had single high safety because they knew they were running. They knew what they were doing because they did the research and they did the film study to find out. So they were just teeing off, and that's why you see Burrow playing really poorly against these teams. It's not that the players like Burrow or like Chase or like T. Higgins are that bad, right? They're not. They're proven commodities. It comes down to being efficient and not playing the certain plays out of a certain set that you always play. Callahan was guilty of that, and I'll straight up say it. So that's why you see those teams be so efficient and so good against the Bengals. I think this is a really good opportunity not to do those types of things.
Yep, exactly, 100%. I mean, if you're gonna let Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt just tee off, run upfield, like throw a draw play in there where you're counting on him being upfield a little bit so you can hit that hole right in behind him. Like if your tendency in a certain situation is to run the ball and he's playing the run, okay, now maybe you have a time to do a 5-step drop, 7-step drop, some longer developing routes. If you give a little bit of help, if you give a chip, whatever, to that side. So I think that all of that to be said, the play calling is going to matter, exactly like you said. And if you can help the offensive line, like we have some talent up there. So if you just don't put them in a bad spot, if you don't already give the advantage to the defense, then I think that the offense can do a lot more because the offensive line can hold up a lot better. And that's just going to come with, being unpredictable and that stuff. And I mean, I hammered Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor's play calling last year for being predictable and boring. And like, maybe I'm just one of those, like hindsight is 2020. Like, oh yeah, obviously that didn't work, blah, 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 whatever. But at the same time, if it continues to fail and continues to fail and continues to fail, and you're not changing and you're not adjusting, then why are we going to continue to do the same thing? You already know what's going to happen. And I think that one thing also that I hope the offense changes this year a little bit is just scheming players open, like running plays for guys, not just, the defense is showing us this look, so we have to audible to this other boring, predictable thing. Like, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want the defense to be able to dictate what our offense is going to be based on what they're playing. We want to be able to adjust and continue to scheme our guys open like other teams do. You know what I mean? Guys like Puka Nacua are not getting 15 reception games with 20 targets last year because they're not being targeted. It's not like the defense didn't know that was coming, but we have guys that are really, really talented, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the outside. So let's make that happen. And I don't mean, like the end of the year last year, we were kind of just like throw Jamar Chase the 7th screen of the game, and hopefully he makes a couple guys miss. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Scheme Jamar for a cross the field. You know what I mean? Okay, like you got the long crosser, and it's man to man with single high safety. Let's send everybody across the field, and let Jamar run the opposite direction across the field and get him open. Like, obviously, it's not that simple against an NFL defense, but these OCs and head coaches are literally there to be able to out coach and out scheme the NFL defenses. So I'm really hoping to see a lot more of that. Especially this team seems like we're gonna have, it's like mismatch heaven. You know what I mean? We have Jamar Chase, who at 6'6", he goes up over the top and beats guys like he probably shouldn't be able to do just because he's a freak athlete. T. Higgins at 6'4", you're gonna have a hard time putting your second cornerback, who's 5'10", 190 pounds, on a 6'4", 225-pound beast who can, run at a 4.4 clip. Like, you're gonna have trouble putting a linebacker on Mike Gesicki because he's gonna outrun the linebacker dang near every time, and he's a great route runner. You're gonna have an issue putting a safety at, I could just keep going, but I see so much potential this year, and I'm sure that I'm the eternal optimist who's always going to see that potential before the season starts. But man, I really, really see it this year.
We do, yeah, we all do. And to your point earlier, scheming guys open, scheming and putting people in the right position, the athlete does the rest of the work. One thing we saw last year teams do as well was they would bracket T. Higgins and they would bracket Jamar Chase. So they would constantly feel like they need to throw outside. When they started moving these guys inside, cross routes, drag routes, just something to get guys across the field, that's when you saw Jamar Chase and T. Higgins really open up. And then they could go back to the outside routes over the top. You don't just start out with that and hope it's going to work because the athlete is so much better. Everyone's good in the NFL, as we're aware. So get past all of that. Stop doing the screens too. Please stop doing the screens. But get away from that. Understand that there's bracket coverage and start bringing those guys inside. I think the addition of Gesicki as well, to your point, is going to be a big thing because last year, I love T. Huddy. I like, what we had out of the tight end room, but they all have a certain skill set. I think Gesicki is a pure passing tight end, route running tight end. They can utilize those skills. Burrow, and I said this a million times on these episodes, he needs a good tight end. He is the king of getting these tight ends big paydays because he relies on tight ends for his outlet. Little known fact about Burrow, I think a lot of people can attest to that. He uses the tight end well as an outlet when he's there. That's how he's able to beat teams like the Bills, because he throws these guys open and they catch the ball. And again, I don't think we're going to be so satisfied with the Bengals. I don't see them as like a 14-win team. I am cautiously optimistic coming into this year after what last year was. We were all predicting 12, 13 wins out of the Bengals last year. It didn't turn out that way, but they were still a 9-win team when Burrow was out 50% of the season and were competitive in a lot of those games. So again, we need to get back to basics, understand that this is a more talented team. They upgraded the positions that they needed to, and now they just need to put the pieces together.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, coming into training camp here, there are going to be a handful of very interesting things to watch, very interesting guys to see who wins what job. And a couple of those positions are obviously like cornerback, third wide receiver. The punter battle is pretty interesting to see how the backup and how the playing time shakes out for the safety room, with Jordan Battle, Tyson Anderson, who we were all excited about for the preseason last year, before he tore an ACL. So he's back. He's not on the PUP list at least as of a day or two ago, the last time I checked. So we've got a lot of interesting battles. What do you think, from your perspective, are going to be a couple of the most interesting ones to watch, and what you think are going to happen in this?
Yeah, well, I think we can cross safety off, at least strong safety, because Geno Stone came in, and they're not going to pay a guy like that and bring him in as a proven commodity not to start. I think the interesting battle, or at least the interesting point of view, is where Dax Hill is going to go, because Jordan Battle, one of the most efficient rookies in the league last year, he's probably going to start. I said at the beginning of the season he's going to start. He's going to start. So you've already got Geno Stone and Jordan Battle back there. They didn't bring back Von Bell just to sit on the bench either and be a vet leader, right? So he's probably going to play a lot as well. Two linebackers are already covered. And then obviously you have Cam Taylor Britt. So if it were my prediction, it's going to be interesting to see where the other cornerback falls into place and how they use that depth that they now have, as opposed to last year where they were spread pretty thin. The DJ Turner versus Dax Hill, what's going to happen and where they're going to put those players. Dax Hill, I think, is a true slot cornerback, in my opinion. If they were to put him down the slot and rely on DJ Turner and Cam Taylor Britt, I think I'd be okay with that with a safety net that we now have. And then I think furthermore, if we're looking on the offensive side, Trent Brown came in, obviously a proven guy from the Patriots. He started out on the PUP list this year. I'm not too worried about it, but how are they going to bring in the rookie? Are they going to bring him in early and get him some reps, or are they going to let him sit behind the veteran, understand the game, get the pacing down, and then wheel him in? I think they're going to try to work. If I were to predict that as well, they're probably going to try to work him in, because you're not going to get 17 games out of Trent Brown. I just don't really see that. He's a big guy. He rarely finishes seasons without some sort of an injury or some form of being hurt. That's a lot of the feedback that I've heard from Patriots fans in the past. So, yeah, I think a long story short, I think that's where you're going to see the battles: the cornerback, the CB3 battle, the slot cornerback, and then also the right tackle spot. Where's that all going to shake out? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with most of the things that you said. It's just to start in the opposite order. I'm going to go with the offensive tackle battle. I think Amarius Mims and Trent Brown, I think, is like the perfect scenario that you could possibly want. You got this guy who does have an injury history, who is likely coming in to do what he's best at, which is pass protecting. Like, that could be a great scenario. Number one, for Amarius Mims to just not have to feel the pressure of being thrust into that spot, but to also have the true battle of like, hey, we're not committed to Trent Brown as our guy. We gave him what, $4.5 million or whatever it was for a 1-year contract. If it turns out that he's the backup, then he's the backup. That's that's great, whatever. So you have a true battle where you take the pressure off of your high profile rookie, which I just think that's great. And two, I mean, can you imagine a set where they have, like, if Trent Brown does end up playing a little bit of guard, or if Amarius Mims does end up playing a little bit of guard, just in like specific sets, not all the time, whatever. But can you imagine two of those guys on the same side of the line for like a 6 offensive lineman set or something like that? Or even if Trent Brown does end up playing a little bit of guard, then you can bring Amarius Mims in as a 6 offensive tackle on the left side or something. Now you have Amarius Mims, Orlando Brown, Trent Brown as 3 guys that are 6'8", 6'6", 370 pounds, whatever a piece. So try fighting through that line. Very, very specific scenario that would end up happening, and it probably, even if we do see something like that, it would only be a couple times throughout the entire season. But
you think it's only going to be a couple times? You don't think they're going to test the waters in training camp with Cordell Volson out, plugging in another big tackle at that guard spot? Because Alex Kappa is really good, but he's coming off an injury. Do you think they're not going to test the waters with that?
I'm talking specifically about all 3 of those guys on the same side of the line.
They could. I don't see them personally. For me, I don't see them moving around Alex Kappa because he's proven. But
no, it wouldn't be Alex Kappa. It would be the other side. It would be Trent Brown at left guard, Amarius Mims as the 6th offensive lineman, as like the tight end spot outside of Orlando Brown. So it would be like in that's the specific scenario that I'm referencing. But I do think that, Kappa's safe. Like, his job is his to lose. I think if there is any competition where one of those Amarius Mims or Trent Brown would play any guard, it would be in a competition with Cordell Volson, who, he's had ups and downs, but what do you expect from a fourth round guy? He wasn't really expect to start from the beginning. So I think that he can end up like winning that job, and he can end up taking another step forward, which would be the ideal scenario because he's no small guy in his own right. I think like 6'6", like 325, something like that. But ideally, if we just keep that chemistry together, Orlando Brown, Cordell Volson, Karras, Kappa, and then whoever wins the right tackle job. Chemistry is one of those things I value a lot, especially from an offensive line standpoint, that you can't really measure. But I'm really excited to see how it shakes out. And, for Amarius Mims, like I just can't talk about how perfect this situation is, I think, for him. Because regardless of whether or not he wins that job this year at any point, whether it's the beginning of the year, halfway through the year, at the end of the year, whether it's because of an injury to Trent Brown and then Trent Brown comes back from injury, but Amarius Mims has played well and just wins the job from him there. Like, I don't see a bad scenario for him to win the job. Whereas, like, if Jonah left and we didn't sign Trent Brown, okay, now it's like you got to worry. You got to say, like, oh, yeah, well, Amarius Mims, he won the starting job, but, like, did he win the starting job because there's not much competition? Like, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And just to have the safety and the comfortability for him to not feel all the pressure on his shoulders, but still that competition pushing him, I think is the perfect storm. As far as but that will shake out however it shakes out. And I think we still have a better offensive line this year than we've had in at least the past 4 years, probably. So we just got to keep hoping for improvement there. As far as cornerback is concerned, that's another very interesting battle for me, just because, Cam Taylor-Britt, I really like the guy. I think he's a legitimate, like, bona fide CB2 in the NFL. As a CB1, you'd probably like, unless he takes another step forward from where he played last year, which I thought was very well. If he takes another step forward, then he could enter himself into that CB1 category. But I thought, you'd probably like to have an upgrade there. But if you have a guy that's playing at his level and one of these other guys steps up, then you still feel pretty solid and pretty confident about your cornerback room. DJ Turner and Dax Hill, that battle for me is going to be really, really interesting to watch and see how that shakes out and what happens with that. Just because of the fact that, like, I haven't been shy about saying I really don't like DJ Turner being such a small corner. I mean, I mentioned it before on the offensive side, how, a CB2 having to match up with a guy like T. Higgins is a problem. So I get it. DJ Turner is very athletic. His closing speed is great. His recovery speed is great. He's just a burner. He's going to stick to a guy, but you can stick to a guy, but if you're 8 inches shorter than him and outweighed by 50 pounds, then it's going to be really tough for you to make those physical, contested box out catches or box out plays where he's got to fight through a guy and make a pass breakup, especially when it comes down to goal line or short third down type deal. So,
well, he's not a thick guy. He's not a thick guy like, you see a lot of the Chiefs cornerbacks get praised. Mm-hmm. They were smaller, but they were extremely athletic and they were real thick physical guys. So you were always being pushed. DJ Turner's a real thin guy, super athletic, but a real thin guy. I think of matchups like with AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, those really big, firm receivers. Those are the kinds of battles that you're going to lose, or you're just going to get out schemed by.
Yeah, and I mean the tough part is, like, Cam Taylor-Britt is a physical cornerback. He's very physical. he's pretty sticky in coverage. Like he sticks with
Mhm.
guys. He doesn't necessarily have that speed that DJ Turner has. But when it's the second receiver, when you're going up against a Mike Williams that's the number 2, and they're literally just saying, all right, throw it to the big guy against the small guy, where all you got to do is just put it up where DJ Turner can't get it. That's what worries me, because you can kind of scheme for that. You can scheme those matchups in your favor. And I do think I'll give DJ Turner the credit here where that he deserves is he's been very willing to like be physical. He's been very
Mhm.
willing to come up to the line of scrimmage in run defense. He's been very willing to try to like box guys out when he's in good position. He's been very willing to do that, but sometimes willingness isn't enough. So that worries me. I think that it's possible to overcome that, and I'm hopeful that he does overcome that, regardless of whether it's this year, or regardless of whether it's in the future. But Dax Hill is almost like the opposite body type of corner. Like he's 6', 6'1", kind of taller frame. He's got like a little thicker. He's probably a prototype slot cornerback.
Mhm.
He's a guy that
Right.
we had like Trey Flowers a year or two ago when he was just matching up against tight ends. Like he was a tight end specialist. I think
Trey
that
Flowers was a little bit
yeah.
bigger, but yeah, I agree. I know what you're kind of saying. Yeah.
So, but I think that Dax can kind of fill that same role where we've got a lot of versatility with him, and we know that Lou Anarumo loves his versatility with his defensive back. But I can see plenty of scenarios where we've got 4 cornerbacks on the field because we've got uh, Cam Taylor-Britt, Mike Hilton, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner all out there. So it gives us a little bit of hope that one of these guys can take a step. One of these guys can win the outside job. And also, I think that whoever doesn't win the job will still have plenty of opportunities to get on the field.
Mhm.
As far as safeties are concerned, I think that Von Bell probably has a better shot to win the strong safety job than Jordan Battle does. But
Really?
yeah, but I mean, I don't think that they brought him back here for the league minimum just
That's a
to.
hot take alert, Chris. Hot take
I mean,
alert.
I like Jordan Battle. I think he was efficient, whatever. But if you're he's like young Von Bell to me. Like if you're gonna have the guy learn from the guy, I just thought Von Bell was so great as far as communication on the field for us a couple years ago, and then
Mhm.
he leaves and obviously realizes, man, this isn't great here, whatever. So he comes back to where he's very trusted by Lou, and I think one of the things that could give him an edge is last year the communication was objectively bad. Like last year, there were a lot of miscommunications in the secondary and on defense that led to guys getting burnt for explosive plays. So I think that if he and Jordan Battle are on level playing field, I think that Von Bell gets the edge just because of that fact. He's proven in the communication department. But the same thing that I said about Dax Hill and DJ Turner, I think that Jordan Battle has proven himself to if he doesn't win the job this year, he has a future as a starting safety in the NFL. So that gives us good depth already to say, all right, we're
Mhm.
gonna instead of doing a 4 cornerback set, all right, now we're in a nickel set or a dime set, but we're gonna shake it up, and instead of an extra cornerback, we're gonna bring in a third safety. So you got a guy that can play, inside the box, closer to the line of scrimmage. If Von Bell is playing like a rover or a monster, whatever kind of position you want to call it, and then Jordan Battle and Geno Stone are back as 2 deep safeties, kind of like. There's a lot of
Well, they're
different
going to
things
play
that.
too deep. Yeah, they'll play too deep a lot just because of the depth. The only concern, and I agree with you, Chris. The only concern I have is Von Bell was proven up until 2022, not 2023. There's a reason why the Panthers let him go, and they're paying him they're paying his salary this year for the most part. There's a reason for that. Whether there's a significant drop off from 2022 to 2024, I doubt it. But in a position that's so athletic as safety, I think the only way you're going to get him on the field more consistently, at least in my opinion, more consistently than a Jordan Battle, who was significantly efficient last year, is in three safety sets, those dime sets. I put a lot of the onus on the fact that we didn't have a leader or an individual that could really scan the field well, like Jesse Bates back at the safety position.
Mhm.
Now that we've added two guys that know what the heck they're doing, we're going to see a big improvement there. I think guys like Nick Scott, I called him Mr. Burnt. You can call me mean if you want me to. I mean, you can call it what I want. Obviously, I can't play in the NFL, so I can't speak much. But
Yeah.
Nick Scott was one of those individuals that I kind of earmarked as an individual that was always burnt, couldn't scan the field, had a lot of potential coming into 2023, but ultimately just didn't pan out. I think that was a big reason why we
Yep.
were last in the NFL, giving up those big plays. Everything else will click when you've got your front seven figured out and you have proven leadership in the back end. And so it's interesting. I would argue that Jordan Battle should get more playing time than Von Bell, but I think it's on brand to your point that Von Bell is going to get more playing time than Jordan Battle, depending on the set. Now, if we talk about Lou Anarumo for a minute, what a big drop off from 2022 to 2023. He was the hottest name in the head coaching carousel in the NFL coming out of 2022 in their loss in the AFC Championship game. He's got to step it up, man. I hate to say that because I love Lou, but I think he really has an opportunity this year with a hungry group, young guys, vet guys, everything in between. They need to get after it. They need to get back to being the Bengals defense that gets after it because they sucked last year. And I
Yeah.
don't think that was, everybody's fault. I think everybody was complicit in their own little way, but it had a lot to do with the unsurety of the safety position and the fact that we had some injuries and the defensive line was thin, and so there wasn't a good rotation there. You can put the blame on everybody if you want, but ultimately, like he wasn't very aggressive, and his trademark halftime adjustments they never came. So whether that was a depth issue or an efficiency issue, there's an opportunity this year for them to be much better. I think they're going to do it, but you got to put the pieces together.
Yep. And to your point, I think a lot of when the safety play is as bad as it was last year, and that's communication, chemistry with the linebackers, with the cornerbacks. Part of the reason that the linebacker play dropped off so much last year was, I believe, it was because there was not that communication and chemistry with the safety room, with the guys behind them. So, 2 years ago when Logan Wilson could drop back 50 yards downfield, I don't know that he had that same kind of trust that those other guys weren't going to that they were going to be covering two spaces or one space with two guys. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of if you trust everybody else to do their job, it makes doing your job the best of your ability way easier because you don't have to worry about covering for somebody else or anything like that. So I think with hopefully, if nothing else, if the defensive line is not improved, then at least they'll be more fresh. So I think that will help the linebackers to play a little more free, and the communication on defense, that will help the linebackers to play a little more free because we'll have a lot of guys who have already been here. Jordan Battle's got one more year in the system. DJ Turner's got one more year in the system. Dax Hill, even though he's moved around to different positions, I think that his level of knowledge and continuity should continue to raise at least his football IQ and his awareness on the field and that kind of stuff. So when you have all that stuff, it just hopefully culminates in people trusting each other more, people being able to kind of play freer and play their own positions a little more and a little better because they do trust that the other guy is going to do his job. So I think that as we've mentioned, the offense could take many strides from last year. The defense could definitely take many strides from last year. But at the end of the day, even with those two units being sort of as underperforming, I'll say, as they were, because they were good at times, each one of them. But as much as they underperformed, like you said, we still ended up with 9 wins. So
yeah,
I think it's hard to completely bash them into the dirt. We still finished above 500, which was underperforming for the year. But like, if that's underperforming, okay, now let's have that positive regression.
yeah.
And just a quick note to add to that: the special teams were bad last year, and that's not something that usually happens with Darren Simmons' team. I mean, it was like every single time that we had a key punt or a key kickoff or whatever. Like, okay, all we have to do is kick it into the end zone, give the team a touchback. All we have to do is punt it and not let them return it for 25 yards. It felt like that's exactly what happened. So
Yeah.
we've got to work on all phases of the game. But as far as it goes, like, the positive regression is definitely what I'm hoping for, because guys underperformed last year. So
Yeah.
I hope that that's not just proving who they are, but that they'll bounce back.
They will. Yeah. And I hope Zach Taylor, I think he's learned that you need to play your starters in the preseason for a little bit,
Yep.
right? Like, you don't need to put a bubble wrap around them, because ultimately fate's going to decide what's going to happen to these guys. If they get injured, they get injured.
And he
Got to
did
get them
say that a couple
reps.
days ago too, that they will play more in the preseason. So
They
that's
better. They all
huge
have to.
positive.
That's one thing every team does, and they have to. But real quick, before we close out, do you think that there's anything behind the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins buzz cuts? I mean, Joe Burrow's throwing it back to his high school days in Athens with
I,
a
I,
blonde
I
look. Is there anything behind that?
man, here's what I'll say is that those three dudes are like, they all have their own, like, contract stuff or whatever. Like, it took Joe Burrow a little longer to get his contract. It's, Jamar Chase, he wanted to wait till JJ got his contract, and now if he doesn't get a contract going into this year, there's the whole, should we extend him after 3 years versus after 4 years thing, and like, how does he feel about that, or what does he want? And obviously T with the franchise tag and this and that, all of that stuff is out the window when they get on the field, and it just, to me, it proves like these guys are like bought in. Like, they're dudes that get, they get like shook. Oh, I got to worry about this contract and I got to worry about this. I think that T, having gone through it last year, his mindset this year coming in is just completely different. His mindset coming in is going to be like, I mean, he said it. There was a quote. He said, like, if this is my last ride with the Bengals, I'm going to make sure it's the best one yet. So, like, I think that these guys are all so locked in, and they were all so disappointed by the way last year went, that it just proves a level of like buy-in, that they're like, all right, boys, we're in this together. They got the, like, Captain Planet rings coming together and whatever. So they're just like, they're all so bought in. I think it's kind of like, if I were another team looking at that, I would be like, all right, these boys they're taking it. It's real. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. And I mean, obviously, I saw the one meme or whatever where somebody said, like, yeah, make fun of Joe Burrow all you want, but the last time he dyed his hair blonde, he threw for 63 touchdowns in a single season. That was back in his Athens high school days. But
Yeah.
shoot,
Yeah. I mean, he came
why
up.
not?
He was the runner-up state champion out of Athens.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll see. I hope I see that. I want to see that edge back that Burrow had at LSU his second year. I want to see
Yep.
that edge back with Jamar his second year at LSU. I want to see the edge that T. Higgins has. They just kind of played a little down last year. There were moments, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll see, to your point, a good difference out of them this year. The number one question is Burrow going to stay healthy?
Yeah.
And if he can do that, then we should be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, my last quick point on that, what you said kind of reminded me of this, but they've all only experienced success basically for their whole careers. So, like, I think last year is good. It's good for them. It's a good kind of adversity, because this year they can look back and they can say, all right, we've already worked through X, Y, and Z. We don't have to spend mental energy or emotional energy trying to figure this out, and like that you're not just going to coast through because you're talented. So yeah. Well, it was great to get another show in. It was great to get back on. Like Tony said at the beginning, our plan is to be much more consistent now that the season is coming up. Preseason's getting ready to start. Dusty will be training for a couple weeks, but he'll be back with us very soon as well. So we'll plan for another episode coming through to you guys within the next week, and we'll go from there. Got any closing thoughts, Tony?
That's it, man. You said it all. Looking forward to more.
All right. Well, Hoo Day.